The Powers Project.
Dr. Holly Battey. How are you doing, Dr. Holly?
I'm great. I'm great. It's actually Dr. Holly Battey,
Hey,
just so you
I'm
know.
sorry. I'm sorry. I thought I when I do my research on my guests, I listen to other programs you've been on and stuff, and I thought they said Batty. Maybe they got it wrong too, or maybe I
It
got
happens
it wrong.
quite frequently, so it's very well could be the case.
Dr. Holly Beatty. Okay, Dr. Holly. I apologize for that.
Great.
A great name, Dr. Holly, for Christmas with Christmas coming up.
Yes, and my birthday's on Christmas, so
Is it really?
yes,
Oh,
it
that's
is.
now. Did you always feel like you got robbed? Like
I didn't until people started asking me that question. Yeah, I mean, I've known nothing different, my whole life.
right.
So it's just, yeah, me and
So,
Jesus.
yeah, so someone like me comes along and points out that.
I never thought about it before, and then I started getting a little bitter about it, I think. But
Yeah, because it seems like at least you better get one more present than everybody else. That.
my parents were very good about that.
Oh,
So
that's great. Now you're a clinical psychologist, but you're also a matchmaker extraordinaire, and this is what your practice is focused on, and that's getting people together. And
yes,
in this day and age, you only have to go so far as the social media apps to see how lonely people are, how upset they are, how they, the negative thoughts they have about relationships, and you see it like across the board. And it's just, and
yeah,
it's sad, and it's not something that has to be. And so it's someone like you is a necessity. I mean, just a major necessity for the majority of people out there, because I think we all can say, I'm going to focus on me. But I can tell you, when I haven't been in a relationship in the past, I'll say, oh, that's fine. I'm good. They're gone. Now I can focus on me. Well, I find that lasts about 2 weeks, and then I'm looking for somebody else.
yes, I've had that experience too. Yeah.
so so when we come down to it, finding love is really the most important thing for most people. I mean, that's their main thing. They don't feel like the world is right until they have that person. And unfortunately, as I'm sure you're going to point out, is that we continue to date the wrong people because we date the same people that we just broke up with. And so it, again, that's why it's great to have someone like you to come along and go, hey, stop this, this behavior of yours of dating the same people over and over again. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, it's so true. We often have a type, and we just continue to date that type, and then we have a pattern, and it just kind of goes to into perpetuity until we have, an awakening of consciousness. And, it usually takes kind of a decision that we're not going to do this anymore. And that point of demarcation is really important because that self-awareness really sets us on a different trajectory, or it can.
right.
And because without doing that inner work first before looking for a partner, um, it's really hard to manifest our soulmate if we aren't our best version, and we aren't conscious and self-aware and are really consciously deciding who the ideal partner for us will be. We often go after what we want. We rarely think much about what we need. Um, and so, usually, before people come to work with me, they haven't been that intentional before, and they haven't really defined who their ideal partner is. And so, we do that together.
Do you, do you find, because I know in my past relationships, and one of the things you say, I heard you say, is that you don't believe in failed relationships, and I completely agree with you, because I can tell you I've learned something from every relationship I've ever been in, and most of it comes back to I learned something about me. And what I found was is that, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, I'm sure we all do this, is that we, like you said, there's a type that we like, and so you are oblivious to everything else when you see that type. like, I dated this woman who was, all right, let me be nice. She was, let me say cray cray. She had her great points, but she was really like that. I was oblivious to it because all I saw were all these things that I really was attracted to. Do you find that to be the case with most people?
Happens a lot of the time. We get really enamored, with who, how someone looks or how we think of them. And and sometimes it's kind of blinding to see the whole picture. They always say love is blind. And so, yeah. So I think, life is short. And I know for myself, I never wanted to repeat the same experience twice. Um, so my whole thing about not believing in failed relationships is there are no failed relationships except the ones that we don't take the lesson from.
Right.
Because there's a lesson to take from everything, and often more than one. And we are the common denominator of our past relationships. And so there's a lot of gold actually in looking backwards, because there are things that worked and there are things that didn't work, which is why those relationships lasted for as long as they did and not any longer. And
Right.
so if we use that information to really inform us about what worked and what didn't and move that forward, that's a really wise way to go.
Well, I mean, all that was right on point. One of the things you just said though is that we are the common denominator. And do you find that a lot of people, like, they look outside themselves for happiness? Like, they don't understand that they're never going
Yeah.
to get true happiness from outside. It's not external, it's internal. Do you see people doing that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. A lot of people who come to me for matchmaking, just think it's an external job. I just haven't haven't met the right guy yet.
Right.
And that's true for some, right? But so often it's an inside job first. Doing our inner work first is the surest way to find your ideal partner. And it's, if we think back to a difficult season in our life and we think about, okay, who did we attract at that point in time? We often, like attracts like. And so if we attract someone in a difficult season in our life, it's probably not going to be our ideal partner because we're not our ideal self, our best version, right? So if we really want to manifest our ideal partner, and we only have control over ourselves, which is great news and challenging news all at the same time,
Right.
um, then we become our best version and we're going to attract the best, ideal partner to us at that point. So, continuing to just become our best selves, our most radiant selves, that light that we emanate and who we're being will automatically magnetize people at that level and that vibration as well.
So when you're talking to people like that, how do you get across to them? Because I know I've spoken with people, and I don't do what you do on, as far as the relationship part goes. I teach people or show people how to love yourself and how
Mhm.
important it is to love yourself before you go off looking for Mr. or Mrs. Right. And what you do is kind of take it from there and go, yeah, okay, now let
Mhm.
me show you how you find Mr. and Mrs. Right. And what you just said about, light attracts light. And I explained to them, do you understand that if you're not where you need to be, even if Mr. and Mrs. Right came along, it wouldn't
Mhm.
work because you're not where you need to be.
Right.
And so how do you get this across to people that it starts with you? Because they really don't want to, because as I've noted before that it's so much easier. Everybody's great at giving advice. Nobody's, very few people are very good at taking advice because it's so much easier to focus on other people's problems than to focus on our own.
Right. Right. It's so true.
So how do you get people to come back around to bring it back on them without
Mm.
them, stomping off? It's not me.
Well, I probably don't always, but in full disclosure, but yeah, I mean, I think I think for, what I call my soulmate clients, the ones that I love to work with and who love to work with me, they've gotten to a point where they know that they're the common denominator of their past experiences. They're ready to harness their inner power and really um, manifest the best love chapter that they've ever had before. And so they're already kind of, in a different place and ready to do things differently, kind of beginner's mind, if you will, um, ready to kind of do it in a different way, because they've kind of gotten to the point where they think, it hasn't gone the way I wanted yet. And now I need a little bit of coaching, empowerment. Let's try something new. It's not that hard for people to find a date necessarily these days. There's a million different dating platforms and things like that. But to find our soulmate, which is what most people are kind of wanting at this point, um, it requires a totally different path. And no one really teaches us how to find love or how to date in an effective and wise way. It's not
Right.
part of our high school curriculum. There aren't college classes on it. And so it's no wonder that people, become adults and don't have any idea. A lot of my clients have been divorced or haven't dated in quite a few years. Um, and so they're, kind of new to the dating scene. And then you add modern dating to it with online date. I mean, it's just hard to kind of wade through. Um, and so, um, one of the reasons I created my master class is because we don't have that curriculum in our, studies and schooling and everything. And so it teaches you how to go from where you are to where you want to be. And it includes, resolving your past and mindset. Because, as I tell my clients, we can do everything else right. But if your mindset isn't aligned to what you most want, your deepest heart's desire, you're going to sabotage it every time because you aren't ready to receive it, right? Which is, I'm sure, a lot of what you teach around self love.
Right, exactly. And I want to talk about that. I want to put that on, don't let me forget about it. I want to put that back here just for a second because I want to go back to the apps that you talk about, where like you said, it's very easy for people to find dates.
Right.
I think the reason why what you do is so important is because even though there are all these apps out there and people can go on dates, they have this mindset of like, there are no good men left, or there are no good women left, or I'm too old, or, they have these excuses about why they can't find the right one. And it's like, so it doesn't matter how many dating apps are out there if that's going to be their mindset. And if they don't see you and get that turned around, then that's going to be their belief, and their belief is going to be their reality.
Right. Completely. Yeah. So mindset is just so important.
So when you talk about resolving the issues within themselves, how, because we know, I'm sure you know very well, that as you start to peel back a layer or two, there's some people have lots of layers. Like, how deep do you go, and how deep do you feel you need to go in order for them to come around and get and resolve the past, if you will?
Mhm. Yeah. Great question. So if I'm working privately one on one, we can go a lot deeper than in my group programs. Um, um, yeah, if someone's in a group program, we yeah, we talk about how to resolve the past, not as deeply as maybe a therapist would. Um, so if there's some deep-seated traumas, probably best left for a therapist. Um, but but we do go there and we talk about, the importance of resolving it so that we don't bring that baggage into the future. Um, and often there are some really wonderful lessons that we can take from that, to move forward, to inform our next choices, to make better choices. And there's a lot of people walking around with a lot of pain and trauma, especially around relationships, family of origin. um, it's hard to get to a certain age and not to have had some type of emotional trauma, right? But what I find is that so many people are resigned and feel like they have to live with this unresolved trauma and pain in their lives. And I think what I want your listeners to know is that that pain isn't intended to be walked around with. It's not supposed to be a lifelong friend or a foe along your journey of life. It is only intended to grow you and to make you wiser. And as soon as you take that lesson, the pain goes away. And then all you're left with is greater wisdom to be more conscious in the future and make better choices.
So
So,
let's talk about this then, because what I've found, and I'm asking you, while I know the answer, I want you to explain the answer so the audience understands. Oftentimes you'll find people like they live in the past or they're living in the future. They don't live in the present. And so that past, they won't let go of it. And even when you tell them to let go, like, this is basically what you were saying, that once you're able to let go of that, it no longer has to be a pain. Once you resolve that, there are people out there who I don't want to say they enjoy being a victim, but they identify as a victim. And so
yes,
they won't let go of the past, because then there goes their identity. So what
right.
do you say to people like that? Or are you able to help, or do you just inform them and hope that one day they'll figure this out, that, what you said was right?
Mm. Yeah. Well, I agree with what you said. A lot of people, their identity is wrapped up in the past. And when that's the case, it often feels like a victim identity. And I used to have that. I used to have a lot of my present was occupied by the past, unresolved trauma from the past. And when you heal that, when you resolve that, um, it frees you up to and changes your time orientation to be more present, which is where life happens anyway,
Right.
right? And then it also helps you be more mindful of the present and the future that you actually want to usher in. There's more, you know, um, hard drive, if you will, processing speed for that, for the things that you actually want. I know when for years and years, I was stuck in the past, and it really compromised the power that I really had in the present. And when I resolved that, it's like I cannot tell you the change that it made in my life and over my energy, my consciousness of the moment, and my clarity on the future and how to use the power of the present moment to really usher that in. So it was a game changer.
Right. And so did you find yourself, because this is what I find, people who live in the present are happier than anybody else. They seem to be the happiest people because their focus is where it's supposed to be. And they have let go of that past, and they don't have these unrealistic expectations, like, I need to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30 or something like that. And not that there's anything wrong with having, that kind of drive, but if you don't appreciate what's going on right now, you kind of miss the boat. I think.
Yeah.
So,
Well, because life always happens in the now, you know.
right.
And
Exactly.
if you're not there for the now, you're missing it, and you're also missing the power that is inherent in the present moment.
I want to read you something that you had said also, which I listened to it several times because I go, wow, that it's just so powerful. It's so simple, but it's so powerful. And this is the thing I've discovered through life, is that almost always, if not always, and I say almost because I haven't found any examples of it not being the answer, but there may be something out there. But I've found that the simple answer is always the correct answer. That is what I've discovered. And I'm not saying simple, people mistake simple for easy. I go, they're not the same thing. Sometimes simple's not easy. I go, when you lift weights, I've been a personal trainer most of my adult life. there's three simple lifts: the bench press, the squat, and the deadlift. And two of those lifts nobody likes doing because they're not easy. They're simple lifts, but they're not easy. But if you want to gain muscle and you want to gain strength, those are the three. But they'll look at these muscle magazines and look for every exercise under the sun to build these same muscles in an easier way because they don't like those. And they're never going to find anything that's better than those three lifts. Some people might argue with me, but for the most part, you're not going to find anything better than that. And so you said something that you said, and I truly love this. You said, when you take away all the things, what is left is love and relationships. And that I was like, that's so profound because you're right. You take away all the rest of the nonsense, all the noise, all the things that distract us from love and relationships. And when you get rid of all that, that's what you have, and that's what's most important to us. And I learned just this past podcast that a female poet named Sappho's is the first. She was the first poet. All poets before her glorified heroic deeds and armies and things of that nature. And she said, no, love is the most important thing. And I agree with that, as you probably do as well. So, and it proves itself out by what people seek, in life, really.
Definitely. Yeah. Two things on that. Nowhere was that more apparent to me than when I went to a very small African village on my own, and it was the most basic living that I had ever done before, where there was intermittent electricity and no running water, and life was reduced to its most essential. And in that context, love and relationships were what really emerged, in connection, and nothing else really mattered, you know. So that's I think when it's always been important to me, which is why I do the work that I do. But it was a really poignant, profound experience for me to have. It really came to light when I was there. And the second is that, the Harvard longitudinal study, the longest study of happiness that has ever been done, and it gets quoted quite frequently, but the quality of our life is most dependent on the quality of our relationships. And I think that's really, really true,
Like,
because you can have everything else, right? But if you can't share it with someone you love, it's life is just so much better shared.
agreed. I think there's the proof is in the pudding right now. If we look at ourselves as a country as a whole, and the relationships that we have with one another, compared to what the relationships we had with our neighbors and our coworkers and those 40, 50 years ago, and we become so self-centered and only caring about ourselves, that we see why this country is in the shape that it's in right now, because we have gotten away from the relationships that we used to foster, and where everyone knew their neighbor, and and it was sort of like an extended family, because Mrs. Smith that's two doors down. She's a cranky old lady, but she but that's Mrs. Smith, and you don't go running through her yard, things of that nature. So and so you were taught that as a kid, but nowadays it's as if it's like each family is almost like an individual tribe, and they don't even know who their neighbors are any longer. And obviously we can see that we're not a happy people anymore.
Mhm.
So I think what you just said is we can see it firsthand, that's very true.
Yeah. Well, we've moved. Most of us have moved far away from our families, right?
Yep.
That used to be a unit, and we'd have the community around us, and now it's like we're individuals, in separated from a lot of other people, and we were living such fast lives, and it's hard to be really conscious when you're moving 100 miles an hour. And so it's been such an interesting time, and it will be so interesting to see what emerges,
Right.
after this pandemic and how we each emerge. And just talking to my husband last night about wouldn't it be great for someone to do a documentary on how COVID has changed, multiple people and the world, and to highlight some of the positive changes
Right.
that happened during this time.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that we become less tolerant as a people? Do you think that that causes this problem between having relationships with, not just within the family, but outside the family, like with our coworkers, neighbors, or neighbors, where any little thing, that someone doesn't do that we don't like, then all of a sudden, oh, they're off my list. Like I don't talk to them anymore. Like it seems to me we're so quick, and I've been guilty of this myself. I think there's some things where you just go, yeah, that crosses the line, and I'm not willing to put up with that. But there's other things I think where we don't want to deal with things, we don't want to deal with people, and we're not willing to put the effort in to to cultivate these relationships because we don't see a plus, if you will. We don't see how it benefits us, and yet it
Mhm.
does, as you just pointed out. So do you think we become less tolerant, and that's part of the issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're living in a very divided time. And so I think, yeah, everything's just very stratified and very kind of binary. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, definitely. I think there's less kind of coming together and understanding. And um, it
What
sure would be nice for that not to be the case.
So what do you think we could do to maybe turn that around?
Mm. Yeah, I think like most things, it starts inside of us. I think it's an inside job. And um, and often, we're the benefactor of it, but I think um, I don't know, I think there's something to slowing down. And um, I've always kind of appreciated that personally. And so it's nice to have this space these last couple of years to slow down and be more mindful and conscious about the life that we want. And and then figure out a way to design a life making us feel the way that we want to feel. If we want to feel more connected, we need to reach out more, instigate contact, and not let minor things, get in the way of important relationships. I think a lot of people don't know how to navigate conflict and don't know how to effectively communicate. And I think that leads to people just not saying anything. And just why we have a section in the masterclass about that, especially in romantic relationships,
Right.
where we need to bring our authentic selves. But if we don't know how to say what we need to say, or don't think that we're worthy enough of having what we want and need, then we tend not to say it. And then, but that's not a healthy relationship, right? And how can it be sustainable if we're not bringing our authentic selves to the relationship?
Exactly.
And then it usually ends in resentment and, all of this. So I think really starting from day one, setting the precedent for a healthy relationship. And that's that's one of my favorite things in helping clients do.
So all right, so one your first step is to get people to look inward and to resolve issues of the past. What are some of the other steps in your master class
Yeah,
that you implement to move people forward to finding the right person?
definitely. Well, we talk about the importance of self-love, talk about how the most important relationship you'll ever have is with you. Um, we talk about becoming your best version, limiting beliefs. We talk about, we define your ideal partner, and everyone in the class has a different ideal partner, and that's as it should be because we're all different. And we define, very specifically who your ideal partner is. And I have VIP matchmaking worksheets that help us get there. We're talking everything from like hair color, eye color, to values and personality attributes, all of that. And then we talk about the importance of teaching people how to treat us, and how we have so much power and yet we don't know it. You know, I talk to so many frustrated, exhausted daters out there, and we often just don't know how much power we have in these moments, especially when we're disappointed. These are potential teaching opportunities. And I've had people ready to walk away from dating relationships with someone who was pretty amazing because they were unwilling to say what they wanted and needed and not even give the relationship a chance, hoping that the other person would just read their mind or that they should just know by now.
Right. Now, let me stop you there just for a second because I want to relate this story to you and I want you to respond to it. I had a client who came to me and he said, I met this great guy and he's all, like he's all these things, everything that he mentioned about him was great. And he said, and he told me, that he loved me. And, and so he's like, he goes, but I just don't think I'm into him. And I said, well, why? And so I kept prying and he kept coming up with like lame answers. Like he goes, he goes, I don't really know. And I go, I can tell you why, because he's not a challenge, because he didn't make you fight for his love. You don't find any worth in it. You don't see any worth in something that's given to you without you having to like jump through hoops. Do you see this often in when you're dealing with people, and why do they do that?
I think it's human nature, you know, that we tend to value what we have to work for. And for things that we don't have to work for, we don't value it as much.
Except when it's free money, then everybody wants that. They work.
Except that, yes. Yes, definitely. Yeah, there's something about that, you know. I have
Yeah.
a friend who only goes after super challenging women.
So
They're
are you
not necessarily the right choice for him.
right? Exactly.
You
So
know?
what do you tell them? Do you say, "Hey, stop playing this stupid game"? Or I mean, I know you probably can't put it quite like that, but I mean, how do you get them to understand that this isn't good for them?
Yeah, you know, how's that working for you? Are you getting closer to what you really want in life? You know, we only have one life and it goes really fast. So,
It does.
you know, if you're not getting what you want, then you have to do something different, to get a different outcome. Yeah.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier about, limited beliefs. And of course, if you've been around at all, you know that you've heard the saying that your beliefs are your reality. Whatever you believe is what your reality becomes. And so I tell people, you want to change your reality, change your beliefs. That will change your perceptions, which changes your reality. So when you're working with these people, what do you find is the best way to get them to change their beliefs, to challenge their beliefs, or do you find it sometimes it's difficult for people to do that?
Yeah. Well, I think by the time they come to me, they've kind of spun out on their own. So they're kind of ready for something different. And I think most people want to change their beliefs. Um, they want to believe that something can be different for them. The one I hear a lot is, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I hear from straight women, I hear, there aren't that many straight men in the Bay Area, is what I hear. Or I hear this one a lot, there's just no good men. There aren't any good men left, which I know isn't true because I have wonderful male clients that I work with. And so, but, it's so important to inventory our beliefs because sometimes they're subconsciously influencing the outcome that we're getting, but we're not that conscious of it. And so, if we think there are no good men left, guess what our experience is going to be?
Exactly.
We're really hard to find because, yeah, the subconscious mind is very, very powerful.
It is. I talk about this. I've spoken about this once or twice on my other podcast, where I said I did an experiment one time. because I wanted to see, is this really real? I believed in it, but I wanted to see if it would prove to be right. So I decided to have a belief that there were very few purple cars in the city of Orlando. And so I set out the next day to see how many purple cars I could find. I was surprised that I found 12. I think it was 12 of them. And I was like, and I only wanted to do it for a 24-hour period. And so I found 12, which was more than I thought. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. To me, the experiment was done. Lo and behold, the next day, I found double that the purple cars. On the third day, it seemed like purple cars got together overnight and just reproduced, and there were purple cars everywhere. So, so it showed me the power of belief, and in that we only see what we believe in and what we want to see. And you mentioned about that it's so important that you align your beliefs with what your wants are, and because if you want something but you don't believe it's possible, as wisely put, you're not gonna see it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true what you say, because what we focus on grows. And so if we're focusing on a limiting belief, or at least carrying it around, um, as you said, that belief is going to be a reality. And often we're carrying around beliefs that we don't want to be our reality,
Right.
so changing those is definitely in our best interest.
I've talked to many older gay men, and um, they have this belief that they're too old. They think the gay community is youth oriented, and to some
Mhm.
extent, there's truth in that. I mean, but that's the world. Everything's youth oriented. I mean, it's not just
Yeah.
the gay community. It's go out into the world and look and see who the models are. They're not 60-year-old men for the most part. I mean, you'll have a few now, but for the most part, they're young men and women. So I go, look, they think that there's nobody, that no one's going to be attracted to them. And I go, I promise you, there are tons of people who are going to be attracted to you, but you're not looking for those people. You're looking for people that you want who may not be attracted to you. And so you automatically take that as, oh, no one wants me. And so when I get them to, when I tell them, I don't know if they use my advice or not, but I said, stop looking where you're not wanted. I go, look, for instance, I like younger people because I'm active. I don't like sitting on the couch. I don't ever want to retire. I don't have any of those things that older people, tend to want to do. And so I want someone who can keep up with me, basically. And so I'm able to find those people, and because I'm not looking for them, I'm confident in who I am. I know who I am, and people respect that and people appreciate that. And I tell them, if you have any kind of confidence in yourself, you'll attract those people. Like, again, your beliefs will align with what your wants are. So
And how you feel about yourself
right.
emanates, right? And is super magnetic. I mean, our beliefs are super important, but one of the reasons that they're so important is because our beliefs affect our energy, and
Yes.
our energy is palpable. If we're in a room, a networking or bar, some type of event, there's certain people in the room that like you just see across the room and you're like, I want to meet that person. And then there's other people that you probably don't care to meet.
Right.
And it's all about energy, you know? So yeah, that's another reason beliefs.
I need to re-emphasize to the listeners. Listen to what she just said. I promise you, she's 100% on the nose with this. It is about your energy. If you walk in and you think nobody wants you, you're right. Henry Ford said that, it's like whether you
Yeah,
think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. And this applies here too. If you think nobody's going to want you, guess what? You're right. No one's going to want you. But if you think there are people who are going to want you, you'll be right. There will be people who want you. So
100%. Yeah, your thinking makes it so.
right.
You're making me think about this woman that I spoke with recently, and she didn't sound very old to me. and I'd never spoken with her before. And she said, I'm just worried that I'm too old for love. And so I got really curious. Okay, well, how old are you? If I may ask. And she said, I'm 40. I think she said 43. And I was like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. I've worked with clients in their 20s all the way up to almost 80.
Right.
And you are never too old for love. As long as you have a heartbeat, you are never too old for love.
Exactly.
And that same week that I spoke with her, I happened to reconnect with my stepmother, and my father has passed. And since they got married, and
I'm sorry.
oh, thank you. So she was telling me, she said, I have some really good news. And I said, well, do tell. And she said, I'm getting married. And she's 84
Wow.
in an assisted living facility. And she's over the moon. And he lives there too. And so at 84 years old, my stepmother is going to be a bride again.
Well, the funny thing is that you're right. Like your stepmother, senior citizens proved that you're never too old, because they're
Oh,
they're like one of the biggest groups that get sexual diseases, because these guys
right?
are in these
I just
assisted
heard that. I just heard that. Yes.
so they're getting more sex than we are.
That's right. I heard that recently.
And so
Yes.
yeah. So that's
Yes.
proof right there that you're never too old. There's somebody
Never
for
too old.
everybody.
Definitely. And you're never too old for love, because we are love. We were created
Yes,
in love. We are love. And so you're never too old for love, because you are love.
exactly. And I and and this is what's important, is that if you don't realize your love, it's because you don't love yourself. And this is why, for my course, I talk about how important it is. As you had even mentioned, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. Because as I like to say, everything in our life is a relationship, whether it's with someone that you're dating, whether it's your family, whether it's money, whether it's your health. It's a relationship, and all those relationships are affected by the relationship you have with yourself. So if you're not having a good relationship with yourself, chances are you don't have the best relationships with everything else that's going on in your life. And you can tell this by your outer world will manifest what's going on in the inside. If your outside is a mess, your inside is a mess. Sort of. So it's a mirror,
Yes,
and it's a
it's so
good indicator.
true. It's so true. And often people think, well, I want to find love, so I need to work on the external. I just need a good man or a
Right.
good woman. And it's like, it's counterintuitive. Um, but the surest way to find love is to work on ourselves, to do that inner work. And, my master class is all about preparing for the love of your dreams. It's kind of like pre-dating, if you will, and getting that strong relationship with yourself, so that you are your radiant self and are attracting the best partner for you, which then makes it so much easier to co-create your ideal relationship and go from there. And who you become in the process will only serve to sustain that wonderful relationship once you have it. I created my dating club this year. I just launched it recently to help people find and keep, their important love relationships. So,
Yeah, you definitely don't want to just find them and lose them.
no, right? The whole goal is to find and
And
keep
keep,
love.
exactly.
Yeah, definitely. And to choose better this time, so that you want it to last. When we don't choose well, we don't want it to last. But when
Right.
we Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say was that, you know, we often hear in our culture, one of the myths that I'm trying to debunk is that relationships are really, really hard work. We often hear that in our
Right.
culture
Yeah.
so often. And I'm here to tell you that when you choose better, when you make a really good choice, partner choice, and you show up as a great partner, it doesn't have to be a lot of work. It's not to say that there isn't some work
Right.
in some seasons or certain issues, but when you choose well and you show up as a great partner and you choose a great partner, it can be really wonderful and really easy, and it can be a beautiful thing.
Agreed. Absolutely. Yeah, I think again that's one of those things, like you said, it's a myth, and it's a myth that people buy into. So it becomes a belief. So no matter how great the relationship is, they're going to make it hard because they believe it's supposed to be hard.
Right, right. So yet again, getting back to the importance of beliefs.
Right. And I want to point out, what you talk about in your master class, because, again, being a hypnotherapist and um, a personal trainer, and I one of the things I always wanted to get across to people is that, again, you can build up the outside and get muscle and everything, but and yes, that can help build confidence to a certain extent, but that might get people to be attracted to you physically. But if internally, as you've mentioned, if you don't have that going on as well, it's not going to last. So that's why something like your master class is just so important for people to take participate in and be able to get the whole picture instead of just part of the picture. I
Yeah.
noticed that your master class is geared towards women. Do you have a master class for men as well? And
I
do you,
don't yet. Yeah.
okay, you don't. Okay, and also, do you help gay people as well? Because they struggle with love as much as anybody else. So
Definitely, definitely. So let me answer that. So I work with men privately. Um, I don't yet have a master class or a dating club for men yet. I started it with women. It kind of came to me for women. I think being a woman and having that experience, I think it just kind of fell into me. Um, I love gay people. I work as a matchmaker and a dating coach. My matchmaking database is pretty much predominantly straight people. And so for that reason, I tend to refer out to other matchmakers who have a gay database. I just think it's in their best interest.
right,
It's hard to do both as a matchmaker somehow. So yeah, so that's kind of where I am. And because I'm a straight woman, um, and I've talked to a fair number of gay people, um, I feel like I am best. Um, I'm an expert on straight relationships. I
right.
know there's a lot of overlap, but I know there's some areas that don't overlap. And so I feel like I'm probably not the best um, guide, if you will.
Yeah.
Um,
But
yeah.
that's very admirable, because there are people out there who would go, "Oh, it's money. I'm going to take whoever I can get, regardless." And you're
So,
actually looking out for people, so that's very admirable.
and I
We
like to be inclusive.
right.
So that, but I also want to also be real about what I feel I am an expert in.
Well, so that brings me to this question, which I probably should have asked at the beginning of the episode, but now's a really good time because it shows your sincerity and your desire to help people. What in the world got you into becoming a matchmaker? I mean, like,
Yeah.
when I became a personal trainer, I knew, like I explained to you before the show, I knew at 15 years old that I was going to own a gym and I was going to lift weights and I was going to teach people. And I just knew it. So what got you? Were you a little matchmaker when you were a little girl?
No, no, I actually wasn't. Um, I have kind of a professional story about that, and I have a personal story. So maybe I'll kind of weave the two together. But yeah, I mean, I very poignantly remember my high school counselor asking what I wanted to be when I grew up. Um, I was very proud to say I wanted to be an interior decorator. And she looked at me kind of disappointingly and said, "Oh, well, I thought you'd make a really great counselor." And I still love interior design. I think that's a very worthy profession, by the way.
Right.
Um, but that kind of set me on a course to be a counselor. And so I went to college halfway through grad school, in college for most of my 20s, and um, Worked with victims of crime for a number of years as a psychologist. Got a bit burnt out because I'd been in school since I was 4. and and then I went into executive search, pairing top talent with corporations and startups in Silicon Valley here. And it was lucrative, but it wasn't that meaningful for me. Helping people has just kind of always been at my core. And I was always more interested in people's personal lives and their professional lives anyway. So when I got laid off years later, it set me on this. I knew that I didn't know my calling yet, and I really wanted to know what that was. And so I explored all my passions, and it took me to Africa a couple of times. And when I got back, I decided to start this business back in 2014 as a dating coach and helping people expedite their path to love. So that's kind of the professional answer. The personal answer is that I came from an abusive household as a child. I saw one of my very first early lessons was my parents' marriage and what I did not want. I've always been a very hopeful romantic. My greatest heart's desire was to find soulmate love. I had lots of wonderful men in my life. I had some not so wonderful men in my life. And after the last of the latter, I drew a line in the sand and said, I'm not doing relationships the same way. That said, I was far more discerning than most, but found that in order to get what I wanted, I needed to be even more discerning. I needed to do more inner work on myself. And so I spent what ended up being 8 months really focusing on myself, doing my own inner work, so that I magnetized the best love, the greatest love that I could imagine. And, but I had to fall in love with myself first.
Right.
And so the master class is essentially everything that I wished I would have known, and all the internal work that I did to get me from where I was to where I wanted to be. And after 8 months, I met my amazing husband, and we've been together ever since. And that internal work that I did is really what helps sustain our relationship now. And I think without doing that work, I'm not sure we'd still be together.
Right.
But it was the right timing for both of us. And one of the things that I learned along the way was that there are so many rabbit holes when we, on our soulmate journey. It can really be a spiritual journey and an emotional one. It's not all fun and games, and um, hopefully some of it is, but it can be painful, the ups and the downs and the ebbs and the flows, and why didn't he call me back and where did he go and all of that. But let's see, there can be a lot of rabbit holes. And so the reason I created the master class was because I thought, it took me a really long time to find my partner, and I don't think it should have to take that long.
Right.
And I'm a psychologist.
Right.
So I had all that training and that background, and it still took me a long time. And I think, and I'm a pretty mindful, conscious woman. So I designed it so that it expedites your path to love, basically, and that you don't have to fall down all those rabbit holes that you don't even see. So in 90 days, basically, it gets you prepared for love and teaches you how to navigate modern dating and how to manifest, the relationship of your dreams and get the commitment that you really deserve.
That's amazing. Yeah, you know, it's funny because with people like you and people like me, I'm the same way. It shouldn't have taken as long as it did. But because of all the experiences I've had, all the mistakes I've made, the things that I've gone through in my life, I can now help people to expedite things. And I'm like, I wish there was a me, and a you back when we were
Yes.
younger.
Yes, I was dating since I was 17, for goodness
Exactly.
sakes. Like, you can take all that life experience. You don't need a doctorate. It's just 90 days and, get you to where you want to be.
Right, exactly. I
Yeah.
would have signed up in a heartbeat for that. Now, speaking of that, you have a special offer for the Powers Project listeners and viewers. You want to tell them what it is?
Yeah, definitely. So for the first 5 listeners that reach out to me at my website, which is findloveatlast.com, you'll get a free dating success call with me. And for one of those lucky people who reach out to me, I will give you a free dating profile review. So we'll go over your dating profile, the text, the bio, the photos, and I will advise you as to, where we could really optimize your profile and get it to where it needs to be.
Wow, that's a nice offer. Very nice offer. Very generous offer.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
so is this open to women, men, both, or
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
very good. All right.
Women and men.
So
I
women,
love my men, by the way.
well, your husband would probably agree. So to the listeners and viewers out there, the first 5, and don't assume that it's all that 5 people have already done it, because maybe they haven't, and you might be one of the lucky ones. So make sure you contact her at find your
loveatlast.com.
okay.
And I should also mention too that if you want to connect with me, I have a Facebook group where I inspire people and give dating advice and tips. And we also have events. So you can reach me there at Conscious Singles, from single to soulmate. And I can inspire you along your journey there.
That's excellent. And I'll make sure to provide those links below so that, if you happen to be listening to this while you're driving the car, don't try to write it down. Just wait till you get home or pull over or whatever, but the links will be there for you so you don't have to worry about missing that. So, well, Dr. Holly, it was a pleasure having you on the show. I love what you're doing, and it's such an important work that you're doing, especially in this day and age. And so, I wish you the best of luck with everything, because it just makes the world a better place when we have people like you.
Thank you so much, Kurt. It was so wonderful being here with you. And I love the work that you're doing too. It's so important, that relationship with ourselves. So
Thank you.
thank you for being a light for your clients.
Well, thank you very much. You're too kind, but thank you. Right. All right, guys. It was, man, this is a great episode. You got, and this is, one last thing, because this is Christmas. This is the Christmas season. And you made mention that during Christmas to Valentine's is what?
Yes, the busiest dating season of the year.
The busiest dating season. So this is the time to take that course and get yourself straight so that you can find Mr. and Mrs. Right during the busiest time of the year. So
definitely. Yes.
Right. Well, listen, thanks for joining us. And until next time, you know the drill. Take care of yourself, be safe. And if you want, wear your mask, just, whatever, but be safe. Bye.